All right, we're gonna start a meditation. Tonight, I'd like to invite us to practice in slowing down enough to notice ourselves more honestly. Not to fix ourselves, not to judge the ways we've learned to survive or belong or stay connected, but to gently explore what compassion feels like when it's grounded in honesty rather than fear. And I know from being in the room with all of you that to some degree we all value kindness and generosity, emotional attunement, harmony. But sometimes those qualities become tangled up with fear. Fear of conflict, fear of disappointing people, fear of rejection or disconnection. And without even realizing it, we can begin organizing ourselves around managing the external world before checking in with our internal one. And so tonight's practice is not about becoming less caring. It's about becoming more aware of what compassion feels like in the body and mind when it's genuine, spacious, and grounded. And importantly, if we notice those patterns in ourselves tonight, the invitation is not to shame. The invitation is curiosity, compassion, and honesty. The meditation will begin and end at the sound of the bell. So finding a posture that feels both grounded and easeful, allowing the spine to rise naturally without rigidity, letting your hands rest comfortably, and if it feels okay, allowing the eyes to close or lowering the gaze to the floor. And taking one or two slower breaths here, not trying to force the body into calm, but simply signaling that for these next few minutes, there's nowhere else we need to be. And gently beginning a slow body scan from the top of the head down, bringing awareness to any tightness or tension in the forehead or scalp, allowing it to soften a little if possible, that space between the eyebrows. Moving our awareness down around the eyes, noticing if the eyes feel heavy or strained, softening these muscles. Moving to our jaw, making sure it's unclenched and that the tongue is resting naturally in the mouth. Moving down into the neck and shoulders. And if it feels good, maybe doing a gentle shoulder roll, raising the shoulders up towards the ears and down onto the back. Bringing awareness into the chest. And just noticing what's here without needing to change it. What does it feel like to breathe? To have the chest expand and contract. To have the belly fill and release. Letting our awareness soften any gripping in the belly. Allowing our breath to be natural. Moving down through the hips and the legs. Just feeling the weight of the body supported beneath you. Our knees knees, our calves, our feet. And taking a moment now to feel the body as a whole, sitting here, breathing here. And as the body settles, noticing what the mind is doing tonight. Maybe it feels busy or calm, maybe restless or tired. Whatever is present is welcome into the practice. And now from this more grounded place, gently bringing the mind to the theme of tonight, kindness without disappearing. And there's no need to think about this intellectually, but instead we'll be exploring it through direct experience. Many of us have learned to care for others by monitoring, anticipating, accommodating, or becoming what feels safest in any given moment. And sometimes this happens so quickly that we barely notice it. The immediate yes, or the urge to reassure, the impulse to explain ourselves, the discomfort that arises when someone else is unhappy. And often these habits developed honestly. They may have helped us feel safe or loved, accepted or connected. And so tonight we're not trying to reject these parts of ourselves. We're simply becoming more aware of them. So gently asking yourself, what does compassion actually feel like in my body? What does compassion actually feel like in my body? Not the performance of compassion, not the image of being caring, but instead the felt sense of genuine care. And maybe true compassion feels spacious, grounded. Maybe it feels steady. Maybe true compassion feels harder to reach. Maybe it makes you feel uncertain or anxious because it's new, and that's totally normal too. We're just gently noticing if there are moments where care feels different. Where care feels maybe more urgent, more fearful. Maybe moments where kindness feels tied to anxiety or guilt. And again, we're not judging, just noticing. And so maybe silently reflecting, can I tell the difference between honest compassion and fear-based accommodation? Can I tell the difference between honest compassion and fear-based accommodation? And if the answer feels unclear, that's okay. This practice is less about certainty and more about learning to stay present enough to notice. And there's always the permission to return to the breath, return to the simple reflection of what does compassion feel like in my body. Can I tell the difference between honest compassion and fear-based accommodation? Now gently, let's bring to mind a recent interaction. Something small, something manageable, but an interaction where you noticed yourself trying to please, manage, or prevent discomfort. And what we're bringing to mind, we're not replaying the entire story, but instead I want us to notice the internal experience. What happened in the body when you tried to please, manage, or prevent discomfort? Was there tightening? Was there an urgency? Maybe some anxiety? Again, just something small, something manageable. And what felt maybe threatened in that moment? What would happen if you didn't please? If you didn't get rid of the discomfort? Maybe there's a fear of disappointing someone. fear of conflict, fear of seeming selfish, losing connection. And again, we're not judging, just simply noticing with some honesty. Now asking ourselves gently with the same scenario, did my compassion in that moment feel honest? Did my compassion in that moment feel honest? Not as a criticism, just an observation. And the beautiful thing about mindfulness is it helps us recognize that these moments are just conditioning unfolding in real time. They're learned strategies, protective habits, but they are not fixed identities. There's a difference between I am a people pleaser and there is a part of me trying to stay safe by pleasing. There's a difference between I am a people pleaser and there is a part of me trying to stay safe by pleasing. And that small shift creates space. Creates the space for us to turn towards ourselves with compassion for the part of yourself that had to learn these patterns. Not trying to force it away, not trying to become perfectly boundaried overnight. Just acknowledging this mind learned to survive this way. This nervous system learned to seek safety this way. Maybe we can offer ourselves a few gentle phrases. May I meet myself with honesty. May I learn to care without abandoning myself. May I allow compassion to include me too. May I meet myself honestly. May I learn to care without abandoning myself. May I allow compassion to include me too. Someone may misunderstand us, and we can still remain grounded. Someone may have emotions we cannot fix, and we do not need to disappear in response. Just let that possibility settle into the body slowly. Not as something to force yourself to believe in immediately, but as something to gently explore. May I meet myself honestly. May I learn to care without abandoning myself. May I allow compassion to include me too. We'll take a couple moments here to practice in silence, being aware of how it feels to be honest and compassion. Nothing to manage, nothing to become. Just sitting with our experience. The meditation will end at the sound of the bell. And when you feel ready, slowly deepening the breath, allowing the eyes to open. Thank you for your practice. So again, tonight we're continuing the series of the Untangling the Mind. This episode is people pleasing. And the question that kind of came up for me as I was writing the talk was, can I be kind without disappearing? Because I think, my life was kind of set up where it was like those two things had to happen. If I was going to be kind, there was some form of disappearing that had to happen. And I think this topic touches a lot of us. I think especially people who genuinely care deeply for others. You know, many of us value compassion and generosity. But sometimes those beautiful qualities can slowly become tangled up with fear. For me, that looks a lot like fear of loss of connection or disappointing people. It could look like the fear of conflict itself, maybe the fear of being misunderstood or rejected. And over time, we can begin organizing ourselves around keeping everyone else comfortable. often without realizing that we're doing it. We want to create a space of familiarity and what I've come to know is like a false sense of safety by trying to control or meet the external before I even like get close to the internal. And people pleasing doesn't always look like really dramatic. I think sometimes it's like, I don't know, my mind can like get this caricature of like the person who goes like above and beyond for everything and they're just like a yes man for every single thing. Sometimes though, people pleasing is just being like the easygoing one, the reliable one, the one who maybe apologizes often or over-explains to smooth tension over, or maybe the person who quietly absorbs discomfort so nobody else has to. And from the outside, these behaviors can look really caring and generous, but internally, they're exhausting. I am exhausted. It is exhausting to feel like you constantly have to monitor the room and other people. And I think one of the most important distinctions here is that people-pleasing is not the same thing as like kindness or compassion, and that's what we were practicing with in our meditation. They can look very similar externally, right? Generosity and care. But compassion tends to feel grounded and spacious, even when it's difficult. You're going to have to say his name again, because
Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche.
Yeah, that one, that guy. He coined the term idiot compassion, which I really liked. It means the tendency to act nice or enabling to avoid conflict, which ultimately causes more harm than good. I was like, sounds about right. It is a form of false, ego-driven compassion where one gives people what they want rather than what they need to avoid witnessing suffering. I'm sure it's not like this conscious, like that's exactly what I'm going to do while I'm doing it, but it's this unconscious layer of like, yeah, I don't want you to be uncomfortable, so what can I do about that? And I think while I'm doing that, I can sometimes feel myself like disappearing in real time. Just saying yes while internally, like all alarms are going off and I'm like, no, don't want to do it. I think as early as like, once I got to like babysitting age, I have a really large family and my mom would like offer me up as the babysitter. And I'm like, no, really don't want to do that. I'd rather sit with like my cooler older cousins listening to music I don't even know versus like playing house with my like 5-year-old cousins. But okay, sure. Yes, I will do that. And saying yes internally while we mean no can be an abandoning of our own direct experience because maintaining harmony feels safer. And I think a lot of these patterns begin honestly and understandably. For a lot of people, people-pleasing was an adaptive thing at some point. It was needed. It helped us feel safe or loved or accepted, provided connection. And so I want to be clear that this practice is not about judging ourselves for those habits. It's about learning to see the habits clearly and compassionately. And so in Buddhist practice, we often talk about craving and clinging. But craving for pleasant experiences doesn't just relate to like joy or like I crave ice cream or like pretty sunsets. It can include things like approval and certainty, or my favorite, control, or identity. And sometimes people-pleasing becomes deeply tied to identity. We become attached to being the good one, the easy one, the helpful one. I know growing up, I always used to say, I just want to be like the cool girl who like doesn't care. That was like my internal dialogue. Just be like, yeah, whatever. I'm so not that person at all. But wanting that, it becomes like I am a people pleaser versus there's a part of me that wants to feel safe. So I please. And suffering begins to grow around those identities that we hold because we start relating from performance rather than presence. We may begin filtering ourselves, and if you're anything like me, it can look like trying to predict reactions of someone else, trying to prevent disappointment, trying to maintain an image that everything's okay, or trying to secure a connection by becoming whatever feels safest. And over time, this can be exhausting because there's very little rest in that. There's always another emotional cue to monitor, another interaction to analyze, another moment to sort of like go over in my head over and over and over again. And I love being the one that everyone knows that they can rely on. I feel like in some ways that's a good thing, to be reliable. And I don't know when to set that down. I don't know when to just, I'm reliable and I don't have to be reliable at all times. I want to be reliable to myself. And so one of the things mindfulness can begin to do is reveal how quickly these patterns happen. When we bring our awareness to the body, right, we can see and feel the tightening before we know what's happening consciously. The anxiety that maybe arises as we're saying the thing that we don't even want to be doing. And so we can recognize with mindfulness and a practice that this is conditioning, right? This is a learned strategy. This is not necessarily who I am. And that can be really powerful because it creates a little bit of space. Instead of being like fully fused with the habit, we begin to observe it with a bit more curiosity. I also think many people-pleasing patterns are attempts to control discomfort, our own discomfort or the discomfort of others. We want everyone to feel okay, which isn't a bad thing. I want everyone to feel good. But it's because if they don't, then I feel unsafe, or something about this feels unsafe to me. But one of the difficult truths that we encounter in relationships is that we cannot fully control how others feel, or how others feel about us. I hate that. If I can just be nice enough, then like everyone, the perception will always be positive. But we cannot guarantee approval. We can't prevent disappointment. We can't build authentic connection if we are constantly shaping ourselves into what we think others need. And one thing I really appreciate so much about the Dharma is that it does not ask us to become cold or detached. The Buddha never taught that caring about others is the problem. Instead, the practice invites us to become more honest about what is motivating our actions. The Buddha emphasized wise intention, which we've talked about in here before, so not just what we do, but what's underneath what we do. What's at the root of it? And this is where mindfulness can become such an important relational practice, as it helps us pause long enough to ask some questions of ourselves. So what is driving this response? What makes me want to be the one who can do it all? Am I acting from care or am I acting from fear? A lot of my actions come from fear when I sit long enough to notice it. Am I being kind or am I trying to secure safety? It's okay to want to feel safe. But what am I afraid will happen if I disappoint someone? And these are vulnerable questions, but they help us move from automatic reaction into a conscious relationship with our experience. We want to move towards equanimity, which doesn't mean indifference or emotional withdrawal, but it just means developing the capacity to remain present without trying to force reality into a more comfortable shape. So someone may misunderstand us. Someone may feel disappointed. Someone may not approve. And people pleasing often creates very all or nothing, black or white thinking. And our practice gives us the ability to see nuance in these scenarios, in these experiences. And part of the maturity in practice is recognizing that we can survive the discomfort that is inevitable. So what does this look like to practice differently? Usually it's not through dramatic change, but through small moments of awareness. We don't want to tackle the biggest challenge first. We want to make sure it's approachable for us to want to keep returning to it. So maybe it's pausing before automatically saying yes. Maybe it's allowing silence instead of rushing to reassure someone, which is why we practiced a little bit with not giving any sort of facial cues back to someone. Maybe it's feeling guilt arise after setting a boundary and just staying present with it instead of immediately undoing the boundary that was set. Because guilt is not always evidence that we're doing something wrong. Guilt, by definition, is the awareness of feeling or having done something wrong, violated personal standards, or committed an offense. So if, for example, you were out with a friend and they asked if you wanted an alcoholic beverage and you're trying to watch your consumption, so you say no, is that choice a wrong choice? Is that something to feel guilty over? Did you violate your own personal standards in that moment? That feeling of uncomfortability is probably more shame. Shame of maybe stepping in the uncomfortability of stepping outside of your old conditioning. The newness around not abandoning yourself. It's uncomfortable. So I don't think our goal is to become less loving or less caring. The goal is learning how to stay connected to others without losing connection to ourselves. So maybe tonight or this week we reflect on a few questions. Where do I confuse harmony with safety? What identities am I protecting in relationships? What happens in me when someone is disappointed? And what might it look like to remain honest, grounded, and compassionate without abandoning myself in the process? Thank you for your time and attention.